All right.
Wow.
Apologies for the late start, everyone, but here we are. So this summer, the St. Louis Blues will look to build upon the success of the 2024-25 season and improve to 100 points next year in the 2025-26 season. So in addition to adding new players via trade and free agency, the Blues may also look to sign key players to contract extensions and make sure that they'll stick around beyond this season. Joel Hofer, for example, is an RFA. He needs a new contract. But will the Blues extend him, or will they allow him to sign an offer sheet and get the compensation in return? Dylan Holloway, on the other hand, has said that he might want to stay in St. Louis long term. So will the Blues lock him up? And what about Philip Broberg, his partner in the double offer sheets move last summer? What would contract extensions look like for these key young players? We'll talk about all that and more today on Note News. All right, welcome into another episode of Note News. We're a St. Louis Blues podcast, and we go live twice a week talking all things blues. It's John and Alec with you as always. If you are new to Note News, then we'd love it if you would stick around. So subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, follow, rate, review wherever you listen, and then follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. Those are the best ways to support us, and we really appreciate it, especially right now when we're talking about a lot of off-season content. We just did an episode recently looking at some potential trade candidates for the Blues, who they might target on the trade market this offseason. We have a prospect review episode that we did recently. If you want to catch up with how Blues prospects performed this season, go check that out. That wasn't too long ago. And then we also did like a couple off-season sort of big picture episodes talking about free agency and things like that. So we've already started the off-season discussion. So if you missed any of those episodes, be sure to go catch those. Today, though, we're talking about extensions for some key young players. As I mentioned at the top, Joel Hofer is an RFA. Dylan Holloway had some interesting comments recently and changed agents recently. So that could be, a sign of something developing on that front. So, yeah, I mean, really one of the big stories this year, Alec, was like the rise of young blues players and, becoming not just fringe contributors or background contributors, but like real core pieces for the blues. Holloway, Broberg, Bolduc, Hofer continued to, be solid as we saw last season as well. I mean, the season prior. So, I mean, how are you, like, how are you feeling about all these young players in the system right now coming up and having a real impact, like I said, beyond just a depth piece or a background piece or a fringe piece like that?
It's crazy because this kind of thing doesn't happen typically to NHL teams, not at the rate that it's happened to the Blues this season. And part of the reason for their success was just everybody coming on at the same time and all these young players clicking together. Even a guy like a Zach Bolduc, who just will continually bring up as such an underrated piece of this Blues team success. That yeah, it was awesome, and it looked sustainable. As I said multiple times in previous episodes, it really looked like something that the Blues as a team would be able to sustain and continue as a run of success, given just how the team galvanized and meshed. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Together, all this young talent. So yeah, it's exciting and something that we'll want to continue for years, into the future, which would require extensions, which is what we're talking here today.
Yeah, exactly. I think that discussion really starts with the key young player who doesn't have a contract currently, or at least won't as of July 1st, and that's Joel Hofer, who obviously is the Blues' young backup goaltender. Really established a role for himself on the team last season, where at 23 years old he played 30 games and started 27 of those. He had a 913 save percentage last year and allowed an average of 2.65 goals per game. So great season from Hofer last year. They were like a really great tandem. He and Jordan Bennington were. And then this season, not quite to that level necessarily on all of his numbers, um, but I think overall still had a really solid season. It's not like he took a big dip. I mean, like some numbers looked better. He played around the same number of games, played 31 and started 28. He won more games and lost fewer. This year, his save percentage was 904. His goals allowed average is 264 this past season. So really, another solid season from Hofer, especially at only 24 years old. Like for a goalie, that's you know great for a backup of his age to be putting up those numbers. I would say so. Um, if he is unsigned by July 1st, he'll become an RFA, which is a restricted free agent, and will be eligible to sign an offer sheet with another team. So as of July 1st, that becomes a possibility. And if he does, the Blues, if they decide not to match, will lose him. I mean, Blues fans should be very familiar with how the offer sheet system works after having it play out so well for us as Blues fans last year. Um, so it's kind of an interesting position to be in with Hofer, maybe on the other side of that coin. And I mean, I feel like the discussion starts with like, I mean, how like what are they waiting for, right? Like, what is Armstrong and Steen potentially and the Blues like? What are they waiting for when it comes to signing Hofer to an extension? Like, do you think they're weighing whether or not to do it? Do you think they're? I mean, like, what are your thoughts on where they might be at in this process? And I don't know, any thoughts you have on why it's taking so long as well?
Yeah, it is super strange that there's been no buzz around it, and we don't know exactly um, you know, what's going on with the contract discussions. I think that there's two spins to it, a good and a bad. I'll start with the bad, just that Hofer is a prime offer sheet candidate, and they seem really reluctant um, to make a move of any kind. That's super weird, and
Mm-hmm.
again, like the I'm not sure what saying I'm looking for, but something about being proactive,
Yeah.
and like early bird or whatever. Um, Typically, you'd want to get ahead of something like this, like an offer sheet, especially. The Blues do have some cap room. I don't think anyone's going to sign Hofer to an absolutely massive like contract that we're unable to match. Um, but that being said, you still don't want to be in that position. So maybe they're just waiting to see what the market values him at, and then we'll decide at that point to match him or not. But that strategy wouldn't make sense. So that's the negative spin. What I think is more likely the positive spin here is that um, there has been no buzz about it because Doug Armstrong and Alex Steen are working through things behind closed doors. This is kind of always how they do business. You never hear about anything like everyone knew that Buchnevich was due for an extension, but we didn't hear anything about the Buchnevich extension until it dropped. So it's just more of I think this is how they do things, and it feels uncomfortable, but um, that's just kind of the Blues way is to be very professional about this, and the fact that there has been no report of like Hofer is unhappy with how contract discussions are going. That's the only thing that would indicate that things are going poorly between the two parties, which doesn't seem to be the case at all. It seems like they just want to handle these things internally. Why an extension hasn't been signed, I don't know, but I wouldn't be worried until that report comes out or like the offer sheet drops. But I think they're okay. I just wish it would get done because I'm a little bit tired of waiting. As we
Yeah.
said, at the start of last season, pay to man.
Yeah, pay to man. I would like honestly, I was surprised that it didn't come like that an extension didn't come mid-season.
Yeah, for real.
And so the fact that it's gotten to this point has me feeling a little nervous, a little worried, as I think a lot of Blues fans are feeling right now. But I also want to. I feel like Armstrong and Steen in the front office have to some extent earned the trust of the fan base right now with the moves that they've made and sort of the responsibility they've showed with the roster and contracts and things like that in recent history. So I'm not giving up on a return for Hofer necessarily, but yeah, I mean, like, I think it makes sense to be a little concerned. So as you sort of hinted at in some of the points that you were making there, it seems very, very feasible that Hofer could sign an offer sheet, right? Like you look at the goalie market when it comes to UFA and the trade market right now, it's pretty slim pickings. If there's a team out there that wants to upgrade in net, not a lot of solid options out there. I mean, look at a team like Philly, for instance, who around the fringes and with their younger core, like they've got some good pieces there. Their huge weakness is goaltending. Like that is a prime team that I could see signing an offer sheet. And so because the market is like so poor right now in free agency in UFA for goalies, I could really see the demand being high for a guy like Hofer, who is young and has 2 seasons under his belt with relatively similar production. Um, he's probably only going to get better in future seasons, and so um, I think if he does stick around in St. Louis, like we could see him take on maybe a little bit more significant of a role. But that is again if he is still in St. Louis. So like if he did sign an offer sheet, let's just look at the compensation levels for offer sheets. So starting at the bottom, if it's less than 1.5 million and some change, there's no compensation in return to that would be going back to the Blues. If it's between 1.5 and 2.34 million, they get a third round pick in return. If it's between 2.3 and 4.7 ish, they get a second round pick. Between 4.7 and 7 million, a first and a third. Between 7 million and 9.4, a first, a second, and a third. It goes up and up and up. And I think beyond that, it's
Hofer getting that 8x8.
yeah. I mean that wouldn't happen, right? So I mean,
No.
I could see him signing in the either in that second range, the 1.5 to 2.3. I could see him signing in the 2.3 to 4.7, depending on how desperate a team is to acquire a goalie like Hofer. What are your thoughts on like if he were to sign an offer sheet, the level that might come at?
I think with Hofer, I would expect him for an extension to get paid anywhere between 3.5 to $5.5 million, probably. So for an offer sheet, I'd probably expect 4 or higher, closer to the high end for obvious reasons. Um, but I think I would put the hard cap at, so Jacob in the chat says 4.8. In previous markets, yes, but I think we have to consider with the new cap numbers, things are gonna sound crazy or like too much that we're just numbers we're not used to. I would say Hofer has shown enough to be at the very least a competent NHL starter. Maybe not one with a ton of upside, but you can at least have him as a transitional goalie. And I would say in the current market, that's probably on the high end, probably like 6.5 million. And that's where I don't know that the Blues would match. I think that would be the hard cap limit that I don't know that they would reach that. Realistically, if he gets offer sheeted, it's probably going to be more like $5 million, like a 3x5 or something. Um, and if it's a 3x5, I personally would want to sign him for that, just because goaltending is never a guarantee, and Hofer has shown he can be at least a great backup and maybe a good starter. Um, and that's valuable, and especially yeah. But with in terms of offer sheets, I would probably expect it to fall somewhere that starts with a 5 and probably
Interesting.
about 3 years. So somewhere in that like second round pick to first and a third range.
Hmm.
And I think probably it gets matched is the other reason why Army and the Blues are taking their sweet time.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting, and I think it's made very interesting by the experience with the Holloway Broberg double offer sheets because, um, I mean the compensation for those two, I mean the amounts were different. But correct me if I'm wrong. Holloway was the single third round pick, and Broberg was the single second round pick, right?
Yep.
and seeing how both of those players have panned out, that's absolutely worth it. And they're playing like players far above what they're being paid right now. That's just interesting that Hofer, Hofer might sign in the range above Broberg, but maybe it's just the value that a goaltender provides, especially right now. And then, as you said, the rising cap kind of makes anything possible right now. And I think
I think the market is just changing
yeah,
so much this offseason in particular
yeah,
versus last offseason. It was very player friendly, but Edmonton was just so cap strapped that I think that was more just being savvy on Doug Armstrong's part. Um, but yeah,
yeah,
I think the market is just changing so much right now that it's hard to totally say.
yeah, for sure. So I think I agree. I think the upper range of sort of what you've estimated seems a little rich for me. I don't know if I see another team signing him just because like he's only got a couple seasons under his belt of 30 games played each. But I mean, anything could happen, right? Like a team like Philly could be very desperate, and I think they are pretty desperate. Um, but definitely interesting. And the another thing I want to discuss here is with regards to why it could be taking so long with this contract extension for the Blues. Do you think there's any chance that Army and the Blues are kind of like wanting Hofer to get offer sheeted and try to get some compensation for him? Or I don't know, like it feels like Colton Ellis being in the system probably takes a little bit of leverage away from Hofer. Um, there's some other solid prospects in the system as well. And then, as Jacob pointed out, I think it was Jacob early on. Yeah, if we draft a goalie, Hofer loses leverage. So, like, do you think they're kind of banking on that redundancy, and maybe they want him to get offer sheeted? Is that crazy of me to think? Like, if that is the case, I don't think they should think that personally. But what's your take on that? Because I've seen some discourse out there online, like Armstrong might be wanting Hofer to get offer sheeted to get that compensation back.
Yeah, to me that doesn't make sense. I don't think that's the case unless it's that they think that they can get a first round pick for him. But because then why wouldn't you just trade him? I mean, I think you could get a second round pick for Hofer pretty easily. A first
Mm-hmm.
maybe is pushing it. So the only scenario where that makes sense to me is if they think that he'll reach that threshold, which remind me what it was for the first round pick.
1 second. So to get a first round pick, it's between just under 4.7 million and just over 7 million. That's the
Okay.
range.
And yeah, he could sign for that. So I'm like maybe, but I don't see that as super likely. I think it's just the extension talks are taking a while for whatever reason. Um, I also don't totally agree with the assertion that if we draft a goalie, Hofer has less leverage in this situation because that's we'll be drafting like an 18 or 19-year-old goalie and Hofer's like NHL ready and he's the only NHL ready goalie in the system. I mean, Colton Ellis is next in line or like Will Cranley. Will Cranley, you could say, is backup ready probably, but um, those are like they're not as far along as Hofer is. I do think Hofer has some leverage here, which is maybe why the discussion is taking longer than we would expect. Um, but yeah, me personally, I do think I don't think they're expecting or trying to leverage an offer sheet against them. That just doesn't really sound like a very wise GM move to make. And I think if Doug Armstrong has earned anything, it's benefit of the doubt. So um, personally, I think it's just this is just the way that things happen. Again, this is the way Buchnevich happened. It feels like every time they announce a hockey move, it's always a surprise. Cam Fowler was a huge surprise. Even going back to like the less popular hockey moves that among the defensive core, none of those were like expected. So
Yeah,
um, I think this is just the way that they do things.
yeah, I think that's fair for sure. So again, they have until July 1 to extend him. They can extend him after that, but then he's eligible to sign an offer sheet as well. So we'll we'll keep an eye out for that. And if that does come, we will definitely be back here to break it down. But last question on Hofer, if an extension like does come, what if it were you, what AAV, what term would you be looking to extend a guy like is it another bridge deal? How long do you want him around? Because currently, what is like Jordan Bennington is scheduled to be a UFA in 2027, 28. So maybe do we want Benner around longer? Do we want Hofer to take over at that point? So what is a contract extension? What does a good contract extension for Hofer look like to you?
Man, if anything, this is unrelated. If anything, I might be looking at a Benner extension this offseason, just
Sure.
while you're unsure of who he is before he wins 3 straight Vesnas. No, but yeah, I think with Hofer, you're probably looking at a 2 to 3 year deal. I think it's another transition deal because he's only 24, so he'll be 25. And so he still hasn't really hit the goalie aging curve yet of like 29, 28 and above.
Mm-hmm.
So it's while you do know what he is at this point, there's a chance he could get a lot better. So for him, it wouldn't make sense to sign for a long term. And he is a goalie, so as you said, only has a couple years of experience.
Yeah.
So I don't think for the team it makes sense to sign him like long term. So I would expect 2 to 3 years, maybe 4, but probably 2 to 3 years. And I don't expect them to move on from Bennington for reasons we've discussed in several episodes ad nauseum. Benner's their guy. I think this season clearly demonstrated that. You get to the playoffs, there's no one else you want, and honestly, with goalies, maybe that is the most important skill to have. So I don't expect them to let Benner walk exactly or trade him away at this point. So I think it'd probably be 2 or 3 years to match up with Bennington's window. Maybe 3 to give yourself a little bit of flexibility there. Maybe Hofer wants 4. And you're probably looking at, like I said, 3.5 to $5.5 million, somewhere in that range. Probably not 5.5 because but Benner's on a super cheap contract. Benner right now has $6 million for the next 2 years, and I don't expect any trade protection or anything. So I would say probably like we'll call it 2 by split the, I don't know, 4.25, 3 by 4.25 or something.
Okay. Cool. And then while we're on the goalie point, as Matt in the chat asked, how do you feel about Hellebuck winning the Hart? So, did you see this, Alec?
Was that
Hellebuck
announced?
wins the Hart and the Vesna.
What did he win the Hart?
He did.
That came out today. I didn't see that.
Yeah, like it came out right before we started. Actually,
Oh, dude.
I wanted to break the news
Leon
to you on
missed
air
by
in case you
like
hadn't seen it.
Leon missed by like 2 votes or something.
Sheesh, that's crazy. Hey, those were like our 2 picks mid-season. But guess who was
Yeah.
right?
Well, I disagree with the voting. I don't. So to answer your question, Matt, I I was not a Hellebuck for Hart guy. I think when you look at Carey Price's Hart, or like honestly, I think Shesterkin or Olmark had better cases for Hart, and just like team record with, team record without, all these things, and also the gap between the next goalies. Hellebuck didn't even lead in save percentage, so no, I'm not with Hellebuck for Hart. I was a Leon guy, so that sucks.
Well, agree to disagree. But anyways, so extension talk. I think that wraps up our Hofer discussion. If anyone else has any last questions on Hofer, go ahead and throw them in the chat, and we'll try to get to those. But let's talk about a couple other key young guys. Starting with Dylan Holloway, who there have been like a couple. I don't want to say like developments, that feels too legit, but like a couple things that we've noticed that potentially indicate an extension could be coming. Maybe not this summer, but perhaps during the season next season or something like that. So, I mean, as of right now, Dylan Holloway is signed to one more season. So next year he'll be making $2.29 million, and then in 2026, 27, he'll be an RFA again. Now, I'm going to read to you a couple of quotes from an article on the STL Post Dispatch. So Matthew DeFranks is the Blues beat writer over there, and so let's see. The quote from Holloway was that I'll just go ahead and read it. So he was asked about a possible extension, and in response, Holloway said, "Obviously, that would be really nice, and it would be something that would be great. At the end of the day, it's not up to me, it's up to management. I still have one more year to prove myself, too. I'd love to stay in St. Louis long term. I loved it this year. The team is great, the guys are great, the city is great, the fans are awesome. It was a super fun year. I'm just looking forward to next year, just hoping next year we can go even further." So, I mean, that sounds pretty promising to me as someone who would like Holloway to stick around long term, right? This is
I
something
guess.
we've talked about a little bit already as potentially like an offseason priority for the Blues, um, to lock up Dylan Holloway. Like this was one of our discussion points a few episodes ago was, have we seen enough from Holloway and Broberg to want them to stick around for an extended period, right? I believe we even talked about an 8-year deal as well as part of that discussion. So definitely some interesting comments from Holloway there. In addition to that, he just changed his agent, and I feel like we should have this discussion too. So his previous agent was Blake Robson of Dynasty Hockey Group. It was a smaller, um, like a smaller, I guess, agency, is what you would call it. They only had, I think, a couple NHL contracts for their clients, and so he switched to. I hope I'm saying this guy's name right. Judd Moldaver, who represents Wasserman Hockey. His other clients include Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, as Matt in the chat just pointed out, as well as who are some others I'm forgetting. I texted this to you. Zach Werenski is another. There are some big names that this guy represents in the NHL. I mean, McDavid and Matthews, you could say those are like the two best forwards in the NHL, right? So some great representation for Holloway for sure. Um, and I will say there's been a lot of the response to Holloway changing agents has been, oh my gosh, he's upset about the move, right? Like he's upset that the offer sheet didn't go the way he wanted. Um, I just feel like we should dispute that a little bit. I mean, his comments, in that article I just mentioned, for one, watching him play for the Blues this season, he was very clearly enjoying himself. Like that's another point. And then just the fact that it was like a double offer sheets move. Like the fact that he and Broberg and their agents sort of coordinated that. I mean, that makes it seem like it wasn't just, it was an intentional move. They were trying to get, paid as much as they could, whether it was in Edmonton or in St. Louis. But I don't think they were banking on the fact that they would stay in Edmonton necessarily. So I think it's a little bit ridiculous that, the assertion that indicates he's unhappy with how the offer sheet worked out. I think that changing agents at this point, after he had a huge season, is instead an indication that he is preparing to negotiate a contract extension, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what are your
Yeah,
thoughts on
for
that?
real. Yeah, I mean, him changing agents to get a better agent is just to earn himself more money
Yeah.
in the opportunity that he has, which is with the St. Louis Blues. It's just him trying to earn the most amount of money that he can. This is totally nothing about him or the team, or sorry, it's nothing about the team. It's all about him, and he wants to get the most money possible, which power to him. He should. He certainly earned it. And so I totally agree. I think this is more of an indication that he's going to stay with the team rather than less. Um, yeah, I think I agree. And I think he and Broberg for their careers will always be linked, just how they were acquired,
Yeah.
both coming from the same team, playing in the same playoff atmosphere in Edmonton and then St. Louis. Um, the way the offer sheets move sort of changing the NHL. Like they will always be linked, so they're probably going to look to sign similar deals. So you're telling me two young ascending players looking to sign matching deals into to extend their, to take up the prime of their career playing in St. Louis. Does that sound familiar at all? Are there certain maybe two other forwards on the roster who did the exact same thing and now their deals are bargains?
I think you're onto something there, and I think there is track record for that, right? There is precedent for the Blues locking up a couple players to big contracts at this point in their career. Like Jordan Kyrou in 2022, that's when he signed his,
Yep.
8-year, $65 million deal after one season where he put up 27 goals, 75 points. Like that was enough for the Blues to want to, and Doug Armstrong to want to lock him up. And then, as you said, like Robert Thomas signed that twin extension. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely onto something. I've seen. So let's first we can sort of talk about what kind of deal we might see as you sort of started to get at there. I've seen some discourse out there saying like a 4x4 being like a fair price for Holloway, maybe as like a bridge deal where he could potentially get paid even more at the end of it. That's sort of like a bet on yourself type deal, but like 8x8 or 8x8 plus is I feel like would be hard to turn down at this point in his career. I think it's definitely a negotiation. But if I were the Blues, I think I would be saying that yeah, like I've seen enough here. Um, like sign him to an 8-year deal potentially, maybe even 8 million or more. And I think Broberg already making just over 4.5 million. Could also be in line for $7 to $8 million long term. So it's 8x8 plus crazy to think for. We can just go ahead and lump Broberg into this discussion as well. Like is that crazy to expect from the Blues for these two guys? Like we have the precedent of Thomas and Holloway, but this is also a point where there's going to be some front office turnover after next season. Is it too soon for something like that? Like, what are your thoughts on a 8x8 ish type of deal for both of these guys versus something about half of that?
I don't think they're getting bridge deals at all. I think that both parties, like you said, I think the Kyrou thing is the biggest piece of evidence here that both parties should have seen enough by now. I mean, well, okay. The player side, if you see a piece of paper that says here's life-changing money if you sign,
Yeah,
that's probably enough. But
yeah,
on the Blues side, I think with Holloway, I would be shocked if he got a bridge deal. I think with Broberg, maybe you could see like a 3 year, but it would still probably be like 6.5 at least. I don't know. 4 million seems way too cheap. Um, so, but probably like I would expect them to sign matching deals just because the Blues love doing that. They love it so much. Falcon Krug, Thomas, and Kyrou. And
John
these
and
are two
Alec.
players, right? Yeah, exactly. Hey, you're not supposed to tell them we're on payroll.
Oh
Um,
shoot.
we'll cut that out. Don't worry.
Okay.
Um, uh, I think with all the buzz around this too, they're to me they're prime candidates for long term extensions, and I think that they're deserving of it in every way. 8x8, I think, is definitely within the realm of possibility and is probably a good like middle median deal. I don't know if exactly. We'll say it'll be 8 years. It could be 7. It could be 6. It probably isn't 6, but I could see that. And then like maybe 9 or 10, but that doesn't really happen in hockey, so probably not. Um, But I think the what I'll use to compare are some deals that have been signed over the past couple years that I think are very indicative. So one would be Jason Robertson, who did sign a bridge deal, but signed a bridge deal after coming off a 100-point season. So had shown more in less time, has since not reached that 100-point mark again. He got 7.75 for his AAV. So not quite reaching that $8 million threshold. Two deals that were signed earlier are Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield. They both got almost matching extensions of 7.8, and then Caulfield got 8.5, Suzuki got 8.75, but they got also in that like high sevens range. And then one more that's more recent that could be relevant, Seth Jarvis, who's a very different type of player, signed a 7 by I think it was 8 by 7.42
Yeah.
something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so those are all big name players at very young ages who got under $8 million. Now they did sign in a less player friendly or in a lower cap market.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think that $8 million is a good median for this type of thing. But I wouldn't be shocked if they got like if they both got like 8 by 7.5 or something. I think that's within the realm of possibility. Um, to a couple other deals that could also be maybe the high end of range of what we could be looking at was another Dallas Stars player. Now he plays center, which is why I think he got a bit of a pay boost. But Wyatt Johnston got $8.4 million at 21 years old, so much younger. He got a sort of half bridge deal because it was a 5 by 8.4, but he also plays center, so different, ask there than Holloway and Broberg. But 8.4 was Johnston, and then not a forward, but a defender who was young and showing promise. Jacob Chikrin got a 7 by 9. So I would say the high end of what we could expect here is a $9 million contract, but that would make them the highest paid players on the Blues, and I don't think they're going to do that. I'm not sure that they go above the 8.13 that Thomas and Kyrou have. Maybe they do, but probably I'd expect. I think 8 by 8 is a really good median um, median baseline
Mm-hmm.
for this uh, for their contracts, and I expect them to sign something like that.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, it sounds like we're both proponents of that too, right? Um, Holloway and Broberg really are and could continue to be key pieces of the Blues core right now. And so I think 8 by 8 at least is, or even if it's like 7.5, like that's completely reasonable, as you said. And it's like there. Let me pull up the numbers here. But there's a metric that I think is really interesting in that it continues to be like refined and updated and things like that. It's the net rating model developed
Mm-hmm.
by a writer over at the Athletic, Dom Luszczyszyn, I believe is how you say his name. But basically, it sort of evaluates the entire contribution of a hockey player. So offense and defense. It takes into account special teams performance. It takes into account the difficulty of the minutes that they play and things like that, and assigns them like a net rating of plus or minus however much. And so, according to that, the most valuable players on the Blues this year were Robert Thomas at plus 16, Dylan Holloway at plus 13, Philip Broberg at plus 13, Jordan Kyrou at plus 12. So like that's really great, especially from Holloway and Broberg. And then another thing that this model does is it assesses the surplus value that each team is getting. So based on that player's salary and then the market value of the performance in a given season. So for instance, Dylan Holloway is being paid roughly $2 million, or was this past season. His market value, according to his performance this year, any guesses?
I would say 9.
9.1 million. Yeah. So you're getting, according to this model anyway, $7.1 million of surplus. And so Philip Broberg as well is his market value is around 9 million. Um, and so if you sign them to 8x8 and they continue to play at this level or better, that could even be a discount. So like that could be a fantastic deal. Absolutely. And so gonna
I mean,
like
I wouldn't be
it,
surprised if they get the Kyrie and Thomas contracts.
yeah, yeah, 8.125 or whatever. Yeah, I wouldn't either. Have four players signed to matching contracts. That'd be pretty funny. Um, and I'll tell you this right now, like if they are locked up and they stick around um, for a long time, like these could become some of my favorite Blues of all time. I'm so thrilled by the idea of them sticking around. Uh,
So is
I don't
Doug
know.
Armstrong.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I hope so. I don't know if I necessarily expect an extension for either of these guys to come this summer. As I said, it could be something that happens mid-season. That kind of like I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it this summer. I feel like it's probably something they're considering and thinking about. But I'm sure the time they have to work something out, other things are taking priority right now. So any other young players on the roster right now that you think could be due for an extension? Like, I mean, we talked at the top about the legit contribution that you're getting from some of these young guys right now. Anyone else that you think maybe are already to you're already ready to for the Blues to extend them, or you know you would be interested in seeing where we're at next year? Um, yeah, what are your thoughts on some of these young guys?
Well, I did want to say on your point of like when these extensions could happen, the
Yeah,
longer that you wait, the more the price goes up. So they
yeah,
would be wise to do it this offseason. And I
it's true.
expect we could see it around the time that Buchnevich got extended last year, which was like a little bit into free agency. Probably it would be like closer, a little bit past free agency. Sometime in August maybe. But anyways, um yeah, so other players that I would be interested in extending. I don't know why I'm starting to be sucked into this train, and I really should not be. But if you give Tex another like 2x2, like have him for absolutely nothing to play on the fourth line and just see if it ever works. He's only 25. Like I don't know, but another extension I think could happen this offseason or next season is Jimmy Snuggerud. He had to use up a year on his ELC this year, just because of the timing of him and wanting to play in the NCAA and all that. Um, and that would be a bridge deal for sure. Um, I'm not even sure what exactly that would cost, but Zach Bolduc is an RFA after the season, so he's going to be a player that's due for a payday. I think they'll probably wait until next offseason to see what kind of season he has, because he really did not look good before this season, but then was awesome. Um, Other depth pieces, I mean, Jake Neighbors could be due for another like bridge-ish deal. He's making 3.75 for the next 2 years, so maybe you sign him for 1 or 2 years after that.
Hmm.
Um, but probably those are the guys that I'm looking at this point.
Nice. Yeah. Neighbors scheduled currently to become a UFA 2029, turns
Yes,
30.
Matt in the
Um,
chat is on the Texier train with Sam and I.
all right. You got some
It's
support.
just he's so perplexing. He's so a
Let's just
paradox
let's just pay
wrapped in
this
an
guy $2
enigma.
million dollars a year just to see what happens. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Let's give him, yeah, let's pay him 2x2 for the rest of his career if he wants, just to see if like it ever clicks, because he is seriously like 50-60 point upside, like
Just
so
career
random
plays the rest of his career with the Blues, just signing a
on the
2 year
fourth line.
extension every 2 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like Clayton Kershaw, but not a Hall of Famer.
Hey, you never know. No. Yeah, like Toropchenko is going to be a UFA next summer. So he's
Oh
another
yeah, I forgot to mention Torpo too.
interesting one for sure. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm sort of I think they definitely should sign. I mean, they'll have to sign Bolduc. I really hope that wouldn't be something they let go as late as they have Hofer. So that would be one I would hope that they would prioritize sometime soon. Um, they just extended Tyler Tucker, not like just, but like recently ish. So
He should be
yeah,
fine.
yeah. So
And Neighbors is probably fine, but maybe they want to get ahead of it a little bit for him. Just
yeah,
see
and
what the
didn't
price
they
is.
didn't they sign him to like a 1 year extension or something like
2 years.
early on in the season, or yeah, 2 years, like early on in the season this
Hmm.
year.
So he still has another year after this, which is why it probably won't happen. But I could see them wanting to do like a similar kind of deal to just get ahead of it.
Yeah, with neighbors, I think this is probably the most. I guess neighbors and Bolduc to me, maybe Snuggerud too, are like the most intriguing names here. How long would you be willing to sign like Jake Neighbors? Like what just term wise? Because I don't think AAV is really a concern right now with Neighbors. But term wise, what do you think? What do you think they'd look to do if they were going to extend him?
Probably he's 23, so he's still an RFA. He would become a UFA in 2030 when okay, let's see if I can do this math. I
You got
believe when he would
this.
be 28. So maybe sign him until he's 28 or 29, so another 2-3 year deal. I think that sounds right. Like a 3 by 4 or something, a 3 by 3.75. Like honestly, if they sign him to the exact same extension just for more years, I would be super happy.
Yeah, I think I would too. Well, nice man. Um, we should also say we forgot to say at the top. Happy We Went Blues Day, man.
Happy we went Blues Day. I
Today's
remember
the day.
I remember where I was. I was in Germany and it was 5:15 in the morning, 5:13 in the morning, and
Man
I
of
was in
culture
Europe.
here.
Yeah, I was in Europe at the time, and I stayed up to watch every single playoff game. They all started at 2 a.m. and they all ended at 5 a.m. And I was like screaming into my pillow. And then I got to watch the sunrise, and man, I wore my Blues jersey proudly that day. Not a single German knew what was going on, probably, but I did actually on the night of game 6. I ran into a Bruins fan or someone wearing a Bruins sweatshirt and stared him down. I was in a Blues sweatshirt, stared him down. I guess this is story time now. And stared him down, and he backed off. So I won that exchange, and the Blues won the Stanley Cup. So perhaps his Europe trip was not as good as mine.
Oh man,
That's what's important here.
there you go.
Do you remember your Stanley Cup experience?
At home on my couch. It was great.
Dramatic.
I mean, that's where I watched 2011 World Series. So yeah,
Nice.
nothing fancy for
Yeah,
me.
anyone watching live wants to share We Went Blues or just like 2019 stories too. We can have a little fun catch up here.
Jacob
I
says it was in
remember.
Soulard.
I remember the double over or double overtime, the um Pat Maroon goal. Jeez, I remember
Mm-hmm.
being in my basement for that, and my mom like never stays up to watch games, and she was just like, "Come on!" and she stayed up to watch the whole thing. So that was
Nice,
cool.
nice. Remember this day forever. This day on this, what was it, 6 years ago? So
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Um, Last question, Matt in the chat. Who you got winning tonight? Game, what is it? Game 4, Oilers Panthers.
Yep,
Series is 2-1
Panthers
Panthers
up
right
two
now.
one.
I think it's got to be. I'm going Oilers. I bet they tie
I
this
think
thing up.
Edmonton fights. Yeah, I think this series just has too much juice. I think it's going 7. Even if Florida wins, I still think Edmonton has it in them to win
Mm-hmm.
back to back games. Um, But I think Edmonton does tie it up. I think the series goes 7, and I don't know. I still think Florida just Edmonton's depth is unfortunately regressing, and it's coming at just the wrong time.
Yeah, for sure. Um, well, awesome. I think yeah, this Stanley Cup final is definitely super intriguing. I've enjoyed it a lot.
Oh,
Um,
it's been so much fun. This cup final has been I really liked 2022, and obviously there was 2019, but oh my god, I think this cup final is like up there in like the top 3 or 5 for me all time. In
yeah,
my lifetime, that is.
yeah, nice. Yeah, it's like it's rare that you get a matchup with history like this, so it is really cool. And I'm glad that it's gotten off to a more competitive start than than last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are, except for Florida fans, I guess. Um, well, awesome. So off season is in full swing for the Blues as we've continued to provide some content covering it. Just for those who may not know, we've got the NHL draft coming up, so we're going to do some draft preview as it gets closer. Probably a couple times. We're going to do some draft recap, that kind of stuff, and then July 1st is free agency. So as the Blues make any signings or trades, as we lead up to the draft, any moves that the Blues make, we'll be here to react to those and talk about what it means for the team next season, and beyond that. Uh, we'll be here to provide some reactions. We'll also be here to provide some speculation on what we think the Blues could have cooking. So, if off-season chatter and speculation is your kind of thing, then be sure to come back and join us for all of our episodes this summer, because we're going to be here twice a week, most weeks, live. You can join us, join the discussion in the chat. We love when we have an active chat like we have tonight. So shout out to everyone for contributing to the discussion tonight. If you haven't already, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's really the best way you can help us out. Like this video, follow, rate, review wherever you listen. We're on Spotify and Apple. Those ratings and reviews really do help us a ton. And then follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod, where we post a lot of other great stuff. Thanks to everyone for joining us for this episode of Note News. We'll see you next time. And as always,
Let's go
let's go
Blues.
Blues. We went Blues, baby.
Play Gloria.